Hey, on today's episode, are you the certain kind of bad that seems to always come from talking a big game? Let's find out. Stay tuned. We love playing music, but it seems like the odds of making a living as a professional musician are about as high as winning the lottery. So the big question is this: how do musicians like us, with jobs, families, and responsibilities, get from where we are today to making a practical living playing music we love? Well, my name is Daniel Hadaway, and this show will give you the answers. This is the Practical Pro Musician. Well, hey there once again. Welcome back to the Practical Pro Musician. My name's Daniel. I'm so happy you're here. It is another fine week here where I'm at, listening and getting emails from folks like you, and maybe even you, if you're one of the people who've sent me an email. Hearing back about where you're at in your pursuit of a music career. I've heard a lot from a lot of folks. It just so happens I sent an email out last week asking a lot of my friends around the world how they're doing, and got lots of really interesting responses. And so maybe I'll work some of those into a upcoming episode of the podcast. It's been, I realized I haven't really got plugged in to everyone else out there, yourself included, in a while. And so I needed to hear an update. I need some interaction with some people. So I sent out an email asking for that, and it's been really cool to hear. I got probably 30 or 40 people who replied and let me know a little bit about what's going on in their lives, both musically and otherwise. And so it's really cool to hear that. Speaking of what's going on in life, I'm in a particularly good mood today because as I'm recording this, it's the first day that the temperature outside is not sweltering, is probably the correct word. I'll just say this: the past couple of days, and this is already the month of October that I'm recording this. The past few days, my son came home from school, and they had not let the kids outside to play for recess because it was too hot. And we're in Tennessee. It's not. I mean, we're used to it being hot, but it was dangerously hot, and it's the month of October. So it's finally not like that right now. And it's actually what I'm going to talk about today on the podcast is actually kind of related to this time of year and a lot of things like this. And so another thing, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast before. I'm sure I have at some point. My wife is the head of operations for a brewery here locally in the town we live in. And in addition to brewing lots of tasty beer, they have a really big open space, big warehouse space that they have a tap room in, and they have an outdoor patio, and it's super family friendly environment. They have food. There's a big open field where kids always are out there throwing football when it's to footballs and baseballs and frisbees and things like that when it's nice. And so it's a really cool place to be. And for one of the cool things about it being that way at the brewery is that they get to have a lot of really cool events out there. And so actually as I'm recording this, I'm in the week between two really cool events. I always like going to the events myself. Because I just, maybe as I get old, I used to think these things were kind of lame when I was a kid, when I was younger, but now I think they're kind of cool. It's just fun to go out, especially living in a small town and going to these little festivals and little music performance things they do outside. And little small car shows, people bring their classic cars, things like that, and do that kind of thing. I love those kind of events because being in a small town and doing those things, you see people everywhere. I was telling someone the other day, I was like, man, I've gone to churches before that have more members of their church than the number of people that are the population of the town that I live in. So it's really cool to kind of go out and about into these events and see people that you know. It's a lot of fun. But anyway, so we're in the week between two events. In fact, one last week was kind of like a car show for a charity. And so like a bunch of people paid an entry fee and brought their cars out, but there was a little tent kind of outside that had some live music being performed at it. And then this next weekend is another big festival, kind of like big as far as our town is concerned. It's a big festival, and they have out in the lawn of the brewery, they have like a big festival stage set up, and they have the bouncy house things for kids, and they have like acrobats, and they have like local artists come, and they have two stages, one for like kids music. They have one big stage, and they do like there's like a bunch of cover bands. So like last year there was like a Journey cover band and a Rolling Stones cover band, because it's fun. Like, you want people to come out. And again, this is for some kind of charity, that this whole event's happening. And so you want artists, you can't afford necessarily to have like famous artists come and play, your event. But you also know that like local artists may not draw a lot of people out as much as like if people know I can go sit and have a nice relaxing evening with friends and family, the kids are having fun, and I can listen to some great music, the Rolling Stones or whatever. That's more attractive to a lot of people, and so it gets people out. So anyway, I'm looking forward to that. But last weekend during the car show, it's funny. I was hanging around, talking to some people inside because it was so hot outside. I was inside the brewery, and this guy comes up and talks to someone else that I knew, and I figured out eventually that he was one of the guys that was going to be performing at this event. And it's kind of hard to describe. I don't know exactly there's not like a word for it here in Nashville. You think there probably is a word for it because there's a term for everything here in the music business to quickly communicate ideas like this. But I got the sense from this guy that he, I'm trying to think of a nice way to say this. You get the idea sometimes that some people are trying to prove something all the time. And that's actually like, I think that's the kindest way of saying it. And it's the most compassionate way of approaching it. But it's people who, they might drop names a lot and like try to like talk themselves up a little bit, but in a casual way, like a lot of humble bragging, if you will. And so this guy was talking, and he came across like, it's funny, like, I have like I guess an alert for this because I work with a lot of other musicians. And so this is kind of the point I'm getting to, which is I try to avoid people like this as much as possible, and avoid working with people like this as much as possible, which is kind of the lesson here. But he was like, oh yeah, I a couple years ago, I was doing a session with so-and-so, and it's some famous person or relatively famous person. And then I was, and he was like I was playing guitar on that. And then I've been playing drums a lot recently, been setting up my studio, and it's like a bunch of stuff that like any one of those things could have been true if anyone said it, but like the totality of all of it, it's just like rolling my eyes. I'm like, there's like, this guy's so full of it. I don't know if he's delusional or if he actually just knows he's lying about all this. But anyway, it's just like, man, like this, but there's a certain type of person that there's a lot of people who act this way in Nashville, especially. And I will say this, no offense to my Los Angeles friends, but I feel like that's like pervasive in the music industry in Los Angeles, in the entertainment industry. I think it's the nature of the town. It's not people. It's not the people. It's just everyone there. It's such a big city, and everyone's trying to make a name for themselves. They want to convince everyone else that they are special, and that's a tough thing. It's a lot easier once you can realize that you're special, whether you can convince anybody else of it or not. But this guy, back to where I was at last weekend, this guy was just talking and talking and talking, and kind of like talking loudly, hoping, I think, that anyone around might hear and think he's cool. And I'm not a confrontational person, so I just kind of smiled and nodded as he said all these things. And then at this point, I did not know that he was going to be performing that day. I was just like, I just don't know who that guy was. Oh well, he left. And then I walk outside. I think I was walking out to leave, or I had to run to the store for my wife to grab something to bring back. Anyway, he was out there playing music, playing acoustic guitar and singing. He was like doing like a classic rock cover thing. And his band was actually pretty good, but he was not so good. And the first thing I noticed actually was that he was playing, I think he was playing an acoustic guitar. Yeah, it was really out of tune. And to give it, to be fair, it was hot outside. And I know that kind of stuff can affect things sometimes, but I actually stood around, I stopped and listened for a second, and in between songs, he didn't even attempt to tune his guitar. And so either he wasn't aware he was out of tune, or he didn't have a habit of tuning his guitar. I don't know what it was, but I was like, man, that is the most basic thing. There is no way. This is kind of a lesson for all of us musicians, regardless of what instrument you play. There is just no way, if your instrument sounds bad, that you are going to convince anybody that you're a professional, and that that people can't get past that. Even people who aren't musical, which of course, if you're if you're trying to be a professional and work with other musicians, you don't really necessarily care too much about what non-musicians think of you. But definitely musicians are going to say, man, that person's out of tune. That instrument sounds bad. Why does that instrument sound bad? A really great musician can even make a terrible instrument sound great. But they always say, like, it's a poor craftsman who blames his tools, or something like that. So you can find a way to make an instrument sound good, or at least acceptable. And so there's no reason to have your guitar out of tune. There's no reason to poorly tune your drums. If you don't know how to tune drums, for example, which I know is difficult, I'm a drummer, I know how difficult it is, that should be your number one priority right now, is figuring that out. Learn, practice it, get better at it. Learn how to become really great at tuning your instrument. And that's the same thing, intonation, things like that. Learn how to adapt to slightly out of tune instruments. I know I've been on tour with musicians who, some really great guitar players I've toured with before, they'll realize one string's out of tune, and they obviously can, as best they can, try to tune in the middle of the song while they're still playing. But they're in a large production where they can't just stop playing to tune. They've got to keep playing through it. And so they'll be talented enough. I'm certainly not talented enough on a guitar, but other people are, to skip that string when you strum a chord, for example, or actually shift. Like if you've got lead lines on that use a lot of one string on the guitar. Obviously this isn't always possible, but you can skip, move that lead line to another string, change octaves if you have to, a lot of options like that. But like, get used to like things like that. There's really no excuse for your instrument not sounding great at all times while it's in your hands. But like, even beyond that, beyond the simple lesson of making sure you tune your instrument, the thing that I really wanted to share with you today is, you're never going to convince anybody that you might work with as a musician that you are worth hiring or worth bringing around. You're not going to convince them with your words alone. Your words alone will never convince anyone to hire you. Now, your words can maybe the way you carry yourself can maybe drive some interest into having someone at least look into you and ask you to hear your playing, or look you up on social media or something like that. But no one's going to say, man, I've heard you talking about how good you are. I bet you're really good. You want to work with me? That's just not going to happen. Now, on the other side of that, there are a million different ways that your words alone can prevent you from getting a gig. And there are a lot of ways that your words, if you already have a gig, your words alone can make you lose a gig. And so your words are a powerful thing, but they're also not good enough when it comes to getting yourself a career as a musician. Let your playing do the talking. I'm not going to say every. 90%, a large majority of the professional musicians that I know personally are the type that they are, they're a musician by the way they talk, but it's because they want to talk about music because they love it so much. What comes through their words is not how good they think they are or how well connected they think they are. What comes out of their talk is how much they love music, how much they love playing their instrument, how much they love listening to others play their instrument. It's the passion for music that comes out in their talking. And they don't ever talk about how good they are, what they're doing. You have to grind and stretch it and yank it out of them, and they still don't want to talk about themselves very much. Their playing does the talking for how good they are. Their record speaks for itself, so to speak. And they don't talk about that stuff. You listen to them play and you're like, holy cow, this person's incredible. And again, they don't keep it a secret that they play music, but they talk about music because they love it. They don't talk about themselves and how good they are. So there's a difference there. And so I will tell you that's, like I said, that's the pervasive kind of personality amongst professional musicians that I know. And I will say that on the other side of that as well, the name dropping, trying to like humble brag, talking about how good you are, those kinds of things. It's funny because if someone talks like that, I can almost guarantee you they're an amateur. And also, depending on what instrument they play, I've heard this enough, I guess, just being in Music City, USA for so long. I can almost in my mind develop a pretty clear picture of what they're going to sound like when they actually do play. There's a certain kind of bad that people who take this attitude, there's a certain kind of bad that they are at their instrument when they act this way. And so don't be like that. You don't want to try to convince other people that you are cool, I guess is the right way to say it. That'll work on some people, but the people that it works on are people who don't play music. And so if you're serious about having a career in music, don't be that way. If you want to impress people who aren't musicians, maybe be that way. Maybe that's the path you want to take. But I will say, as a side note, before I wrap this up, I don't think this came out in what I said, but I want to be clear that this is not what I'm saying. In fact, the opposite. I have a ton of respect for people who are making a living, like as local musicians. And a lot of people aren't making a living doing this. I actually know some people in some cover bands. Like I know, like there's some guys on like a Journey cover band who like they earn basically a full-time living. They like do like that, and they play like they like also have a wedding band they play. In between those two things, they make a very respectable, good full-time income from those two things as a part of a band that does those things. But they take care of their business as well. But I just want to make sure I'm clear. I love listening to quote unquote small time artists, local artists who are playing their own music, who are also doing some covers, because I love music and I love. It's fun to see how talented people are around us. So I'm not in any way making fun of the guy for playing this event. Obviously, it's a charity event. I would guarantee you that him and his band gave their time and gave their performance for free because it's for a good cause. So I'm in no way bashing that whole scene. And the same thing with, like I was talking about this festival that I'm going to this next weekend with the couple of cover bands that'll be there that it's actually a lot of fun. Like I actually enjoy like when some of them like will like actually dress like the bands, and do the whole thing. I love that. It's a lot of fun. And so, nothing but love for all the people out there trying to make a living, on music and pursuing that path. I love it. So just want to put that out there before we wrap up. All right. If you want to let me know how you're doing in your career, and you didn't get my email newsletter asking about how you're doing, you can send me an email. So I'd love to hear from you, Daniel@danielhadaway.com. Or if you'd like to have me talk about something on the show, or you have a question for me that you'd like me to answer here on the show, I'd love to hear from you as well. You can send me an email, Daniel@danielhadaway.com, or you can go to danielhadaway.com, or I believe promusician.org. Use the contact form on those websites, and you can reach me that way, and I would be happy to talk to you here on the show. All right, thanks for joining me this week. I am going to run off and probably go check in on my wife and see how things are going with the setup for this next big music festival. So we'll talk again soon. Bye for now.